Game of Thrones Season 4, Episode 5 has just ended, but we're just getting started here on Game of Thrones Live. And now, here are two guys who just applied for a summer internship at the Iron Bank, Rob Cesternino, and here's Antonio Mazzaro. Antonio, how are you?
I'm just great, Rob. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. Of course, Josh Wigler is on assignment this week. He'll be back with us next week, but Antonio and I recapped Breaking Bad during the final 8, and Antonio's part of the post-show recaps team, and he is a super knowledgeable Game of Thrones expert. So, Antonio, welcome back to post-show recaps.
Thank you very much, Rob. I feel bad tonight filling in for Josh because there was such great Hodor action that I know when that happened, Josh had to be losing his mind. So, sorry, Josh. I'm here to talk a little Hodor tonight.
Okay, well, Josh, if you're listening, maybe you could warg into Antonio. I know you couldn't be with us, but maybe you could still be with us in spirit.
I'm so craven.
Oh, your eyes are rolling back in your head. Okay, all right, so we have a lot to talk about here tonight. A lot of revelations here tonight as we reach the halfway point of Game of Thrones Season 4, so a lot to talk about. I want to go through everything that we learned about Littlefinger tonight because this changes everything. Game changer, Antonio.
Yeah, game changer for sure, and it's a Game of Thrones changer in some respects, and it kind of casts a new light on everything you've seen before now that you know exactly where Littlefinger started moving the chess pieces around on the board.
All right, so that's the big thing that I want to go through before we get into tonight's episode as we've learned new information. Of course, this is Game of Thrones Live. This is your first word in Game of Thrones, and that's why we need to hear from you guys. We've got the chat room going here on postshowrecaps.com. We're also taking your tweets, hashtag PSRecaps, and of course, you can post comments on our YouTube channel at postshowrecaps.com/YouTube. And just a couple of other Game of Thrones notes. Of course, you could subscribe to our Game of Thrones only podcast at postshowrecaps.com/GOT iTunes. This week, Antonio, we did our first ever Game of Thrones feedback show during the week. We got a lot of questions from you guys. During the week after this episode airs, you can go ahead and send in your questions at postshowrecaps.com/feedback or via our voicemail inbox at postshowrecaps.com/voicemail. And then also last week, Josh did the Game of Thrones book club for those of you guys who have read the books and are spoiling everything, and not for us because you're being very respectful and only with each other. But it was such a big success that Josh is going to be doing it again this week. So if you want to join Josh Wigler's Game of Thrones book club, that's going to be live again this week at 4 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday the 6th. So if you want to join Josh and Terry Schwartz once again, that's going to be on Tuesday. So that's going to be very, very another big week in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, the recap show or the feedback show was great. The book club was awesome. So I'm just happy to have something to follow along with here, and I'm really happy to be a part of it tonight.
Okay, good. Well, Antonio, let's start off here with Littlefinger because I have a ton of questions now because this really does change everything. And I started doing a Season 1 rewatch, and I got about halfway through, and I feel like I need to go back even and watch this again because I need to understand everything that Littlefinger was doing because the big revelation that we got, and I'm not sure if everybody caught it, was when Littlefinger says to Lysa Arryn, isn't this great, all the things that we've done, and then I asked you to put the poison in your husband's cup, or she starts saying that, which was a little bit, she was monologuing. And last week, Littlefinger was monologuing. This week, it was Lysa Arryn. So she spills the beans of that she was the one that poisoned John Arryn, who, if you remember, all the way back in the first episode of Game of Thrones, he was the hand of the king to King Robert, who died, and then King Robert had to go and ask Ned Stark to be the new hand of the king and replace John Arryn. Then Cat Stark and Ned Stark, they got the letter from Lysa Arryn that said, I believe that the Lannisters poisoned my husband. And that's what sort of got this whole War of the Five Kings rolling. Have I gotten anything incorrect, Antonio?
No, that sounds good to me. The only part you left out was where, while Lysa was monologuing, Littlefinger interrupted with a kiss and then apparently married her so that she would shut up. I mean, that's how big of a secret this is that he's held on to it. She seems to be the only one who knows, and he's really been kind of in control this whole time. So I think you pretty much nailed it.
Okay, so a number of different questions. Could you just clarify something for me also? Can you go back to the attempt on Bran's life? I believe it's in the second episode of Game of Thrones. The whole business with the dagger, and Littlefinger identifies it as that the Lannisters gave that dagger. Of course, Littlefinger didn't know that Bran was going to climb up the tower and Jaime Lannister was going to push him out the window. But it seems like Littlefinger takes advantage of this opportunity here to murder Bran. Could you just talk through what was his plot there?
So it seems like what Littlefinger's doing with not only that, but with also what he does asking, Lysa to write the letter, is he's really pitting the Starks and the Lannisters against each other from the jump. I mean, he's got John Arryn poisoned. He knows that that's going to put a lot of disarray into King Robert's rule, and we can talk about that, how John Arryn probably was a key part of that. But once he throws that into disarray, then he can pit the Starks and the Lannisters against one another, with the idea being that he can probably then, it's like Russell Hantz on Survivor, burning socks. It's just creating chaos, and then once people are chaotic and behaving not rationally, the person who's kind of in the wings, controlling things, has the ability to control their moves, and that's what we see from Littlefinger in Season 1. After this, Cat comes to him and says, it was your dagger, and he says, yeah, but I lost that gambling to Tyrion, and then Cat trusts him. So then what happens is he starts talking to Ned. He lets Ned know about what's going on with King Robert, and then Ned takes it a step too far, and that's when Littlefinger turns back on him. So Littlefinger's plan really the whole time has been, I think, to stay in the shadows and really manipulate and maneuver people. And he's done that really his whole life. His name is Littlefinger because he came from a very little place in the Vale, from nothing, basically. And, Cat Tully's family mockingly called him Littlefinger because he was from literally nothing. And he was fostered there. He's a foster child raised with them. And so he's taken that name and he's earned it. And he said, that's who I am, and this is how much I've grown up to be. So he's really a manipulator, very much so. He's the man who's really playing the Game of Thrones.
Okay, so lots of follow-up questions. Okay, how much was Littlefinger and Lysa Arryn in lockstep about this? Because it seems as though even from Season 1, Littlefinger was trying to set up Tyrion to take the fall way back then, and then they had him in the Eyrie back in Season 1, and Lysa Arryn lets him slip through her fingers. Is she in on this then to hold on to, basically to see that Tyrion Lannister takes the fall, and then he ends up getting away with the whole trial by combat escape clause?
I think it's a very good question. I mean, we saw from her tonight that the one thing she is for sure is completely nuts. So, last episode or 2 episodes ago when Littlefinger had Ser Dantos killed, he said, I don't trust, pathetic drunks, essentially, and he can't have trusted her that much, although he did trust her with this key secret. So I'm not sure if she was in it to get Tyrion out the whole time. It certainly seems possible, but he certainly was manipulating her from the jump. So he could have probably manipulated her into anything, but he's too stupid to trust her fully.
Okay, so did Littlefinger have anything to do with the murder of King Robert? Because that comes also after everything that happens after the death of John Arryn. So was that anything having to do with Littlefinger, or that was just the Lannisters on their own? They took out King Robert.
I think that's a very good question. I mean, I think certainly Littlefinger feels better with Joffrey as king, right? Because this is something that's more easily manipulated. He's just boy king, and he in fact says to Ned some point in Season 1, like, Ned wants to expose the whole thing. He comes clean to Littlefinger and says, I know all these things have happened. We need to expose this. And Littlefinger's like, no. Let's let Joffrey rule. And if he turns out to be the kind of king we can work with, let's just leave it. And Ned said, no, that's treason. So it sounds to me in that instance like Littlefinger's being a little more opportunistic. But maybe not seeing the sort of thing Littlefinger would do in that instance is just continue to plant seeds in Cersei's head, right? Talk to her about how Robert, is a horrible drunk when he hunts or whatever. Plant things in her head and let her take action on it. That's more his style.
And let's not also forget Littlefinger's involvement with the freeing of Jaime Lannister, which ends up being a huge turning point in the battle between Robb and the Lannister forces.
Right. I mean, he really is just, he's really involved in almost all of these things from the jump. He's doing basically, he's hearing secrets through people like Raz, that are in brothels. He's manipulating them, and he seems to be the kind of guy who has a long-term plan in mind. And so when he sees something he can act on, that's what he does. It isn't so much always that he's got this Frank Underwood-style plan where he's got it all laid out and all the pieces just need to be lined up. It's more, he causes some chaos. He knows the chaos is coming. He can respond to it, and he seizes the opportunity. He's not the strongest guy. He's not the most well-connected guy. He's not the richest guy, but he might be the smartest guy, so that's how he does it.
And now the big, mystery is, where is this all going with the part of being married to Lysa Arryn, and what is he doing with Sansa? And for those of us who don't know where it's going, I can only speculate on what Littlefinger has in store. But I mean, my guess, and you don't have to address this, is he's got Lysa Arryn, and it feels like the next part of this plan has got to be, you got to kill off Lysa Arryn, because she is so unstable and so crazy that I can't imagine that this is the end game to get to Lysa Arryn, because you got to be wondering what the next step in the plan is. But I won't have you address any of that.
Well, no, keep in mind, he's the one who brokered the alliance between the Tyrells and the Lannisters. So he's constantly just doing things that make him seem on paper to be a pretty upstanding, dependable guy. But behind the scenes, he's doing things that are totally nuts and totally for his own benefit. So it wouldn't be shocking if he married Lysa Arryn one night and murdered her the next. It would be totally in keeping with what we've seen from him. I can understand why you would think that.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into talking about this episode, which actually starts with King Tommen being sworn in. And I thought there was an interesting moment that happens between Cersei and Margaery. And maybe I'm off on this, but Antonio, did it seem like there's been a little bit of a thawing between Cersei and Margaery from the previous conversations that they've had together? Because Cersei seemed, especially for Cersei, this was like as warm as she gets, I felt like.
Thawing is, I think, the right word. I mean, winter is coming in some places, but the ice is melting there between the two of them for sure. I think even Margaery was pretty surprised at that, don't you?
I certainly was, because I remember in season 3 that they have a conversation, and Margaery is like, "Oh, we'll be sisters," and basically Cersei says, "If you call me sister again, I'll have you murdered in your sleep." And she does exactly that. She calls her sister.
Yes, she does. And the look on Cersei's face is just kind of like, yeah. And I don't know if Marjorie's one step ahead. See, my thinking was that this episode, Cersei was kind of playing her own little game. She's kind of manipulating her father because she wants Tyrion dead. So she's, making her case to him in the room. Then she goes and meets with Prince Oberyn, and she's making her case to him about what a good mother she is and how she misses her daughter so much. I mean, it's pretty obvious to me that she's trying to work the court to get a verdict in her favor. So I don't know if the Margaery thing plays in there at all, but I mean, pretty soon after that, she's with Tywin saying, like, I think Margaery should still get married to Tommen, and I'm 2 weeks later going to get married to Loras, and, oh, by the way, don't you think Tyrion should die?
Yeah. No, I thought that was all very interesting for Cersei, that it seems like she's just playing the game especially hard. I don't get why all of a sudden she is so warm to Margaery, especially when it seems like she's going to get to be the queen no matter what, even though, I mean, she basically has to realize that Margaery lucked out here to get Tommen instead of Joffrey. And Cersei even admits that. Yeah,
he would have been your nightmare, she says. And I mean, that's a horrible thing for a mother to say, about her son. But, she admits that. And I don't know why she's, kind of showing this vulnerability. The only thing that I could speculate is that she really wants to make sure Margaery's on board because she wants to then take it to Tywin and say, hey, I think it's a good idea, and oh, by the way, the one loose end with all this is we got to get rid of Tyrion.
Yeah. So very interesting stuff between Cersei and Margaery. And I even felt like that Margaery was testing the limits of how much BS Cersei could take when Cersei asked her, oh, but do you still want to be queen? She's like, oh, I hadn't even thought about that. That's funny that you should even mention that. That thought hasn't even crossed my mind.
I better ask my father, yeah.
Yeah, I got to ask my dad if I can marry him. So I feel like Cersei, that you would think that under normal circumstances that would have made her head explode, but tonight she takes it all, just rolls off the back.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget, Margaery's no amateur here. She's a pro when it comes to manipulation in games and knowing how to control people as well. Her grandma in a previous episode said, I was great at it, and you're even better at it. So it's not crazy that Margaery would be able to kind of test the limits of the conversation by saying a little bit more outrageous things step by step. And after that, she does drop the sister line, as you pointed out. So she kind of knows what's going on and knows it's weird for Cersei to be approaching her like that. So she does try to test the limits, I think.
All right, let's stick with Cersei and all of the King's Landing stuff before we move on to some of the other places that takes place in the episode. So let's go to Cersei talking with her dad. And they are, Cersei's being very agreeable with Tywin also. And again, you feel like is she just sucking up to her dad to try to get this verdict in her favor?
Yeah, at one point she says something like, what does Tyrion deserve for lighting that future on fire? And then she kind of pivots, and I was waiting for her to say, I rest my case. It was like she's the prosecutor here.
Yeah, now I had been wrestling with this back and forth over the last couple of episodes of, is Tywin... he is setting up the jury, and he's putting basically Mace Tyrell on the 3-person jury, and then also Prince Oberyn, and it's being set up so that he can control where it's going. But I was under the impression, I've gone back and forth, that he was setting it up to make sure that Tyrion was going to be guilty. But after watching this episode, I'm definitely not coming away with the impression that Tywin has his mind made up.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is probably that Tywin will do whatever he feels is best for the realm and best for his family and best for, the new king. And so if that seems to be, if the winds are blowing, that means take out Tyrion, that's what he's going to do. By stacking the jury in his favor, he enables himself to do whatever he wants. I think Tyrion certainly believes, as I think Josh pointed out in a previous episode here, I think Tyrion certainly believes that his father's stacking the deck against him. So that's, I think, all we can really assume. But I agree with you. It seemed a little softer tonight. He didn't really want to talk about the case or anything.
Yeah, he said, I can't talk to you about it. I have to respect he takes his job very seriously. But now, obviously, what is the reason why Tywin doesn't want to talk with Cersei? Is because he just doesn't trust her to not be blabbing about this to people?
Yeah, probably. And, also probably he doesn't necessarily respect her and doesn't want to have those conversations with her. He probably doesn't want to get into this emotional thing. And there's probably a lot to it. But, he's Tywin Lannister. He doesn't have to talk to anybody he doesn't want to.
All right, now let's talk about something that I know that you're pumped up to talk about. We get sort of the revelation here that the Lannisters are broke. Now, we talked about this in passing before about how the Lannister family and the Bluth family are not all that different, but they actually are much more similar than maybe we even realize.
Yeah, and it's Cinco de Cuatro here tonight. So yeah, they're very similar. It's funny too. Is Jaime Lannister Michael Bluth then?
Well, we think that he may well be Buster at this point because he has some similarities.
Hands off that joke.
Yeah. But they are basically completely broke, and maybe they're gonna have to go live in a model castle soon.
Yeah, or maybe they'll be taking the stair horse to across Westeros.
But seriously, so the Lannisters are broke, and it turns out that this marriage with the Tyrells is more for the financial implications than anything else.
Yeah, and not surprising, right? Like, it makes a lot of sense that again, Tywin Lannister, knowing what's going on, is going to reach out and touch someone and make the right deal. So yeah, it's kind of sad for the Lannisters. The joke is that a Lannister, or that the Lannisters shit gold, so maybe you should just go to the bathroom a couple times.
Yeah, and Lannister is supposed to always pay his debts, but I guess not when those debts are to the Iron Bank.
Yeah, we don't want that. No, we don't. They don't even know who to talk to. It almost got to the point where it was like Arrested Development. Cersei's kind of riffing like, there has to be someone that has a job there that we can talk to. Like, what do you mean there's nobody that we can talk to? Like, I'm laughing because she's just laughing. She's talking about the absurdity of this Iron Bank. But yeah. They're in big trouble.
Basically, all you have is just an address to send a raven to, and maybe you hear back from somebody, maybe you don't.
Yeah, not good.
Terrible customer service at the Iron Bank of Bravos. They probably outsource all of the customer service. You send a raven, and it goes to like some Dothraki that's like trying to, just has a script that's writing back to you.
No, I think that the parent company, the Iron Bank, is Comcast.
Oh, even terrible. So that's going to be a big storyline, it seems like. Anything else with the Iron Bank of Bravos before we move on?
Yeah, they're coming, right? We heard Davos talk about him in the past, and that seems to be his plan. So they're going to play a part, it seems like, one way or the other. And the more we hear about him, these things keep coming up. The more we know seeds are being planted for something. So it depends. I guess it remains to be seen on how they're going to play a part. Okay,
let's go to Cersei Part 3 now with Prince Oberyn, and I'm not exactly sure, who was playing who in this scene. So Cersei talked with Prince Oberyn, and Prince Oberyn, we're talking about how they have Marcella over in Dorne, and basically she was talking about how much she loves her daughter, and what was the purpose of seeing Cersei and Oberyn's conversation other than just spending time with these two characters?
Again, my thinking was that they seem to be showing that Cersei's really stepping her game up when it comes to manipulation. I mean, she plays one kind of like, I'll be the dutiful daughter with Tywin, and then at the end she throws in, oh, by the way, we need to get rid of Tyrion. He burned our future down. Then you see her talking to another one of the judges, and she's talking to Oberyn, and she's basically saying, I'm such a good mother. I miss my daughter so much. I worry about her so much. I had them build a ship as a gift for her. I'm so worried about her. I don't know if I'm ever going to see her again. And so she's appealing. He's writing a poem when she first encounters him. So she's appealing maybe to his sensibilities as an emotional, decent human, somebody who doesn't belong at King's Landing. And so maybe my only thinking is that scene is there to show that she's manipulating him possibly as well, hoping to try to control what happens with Tyrion.
So she's like, I'm such a great mother. I'm so sad about my kid being dead. I hope, please bring the killer to justice, because I already have one daughter who's not even here, who I miss so much, and now I have another kid that's dead. What good is being so powerful if we can't protect the people that we love? So, could please kill my brother.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the sense that I wondered why that scene was there as well. And obviously it adds a little bit of character and builds a little bit for Prince Oberyn, and that's important, I think, because he's clearly not here in King's Landing just to make a couple of sexual appearances and write a half a poem. He's here for something. So the more we learn about him as a person, the more that's going to mean when that something comes up. Whatever it is, whether it's playing a role in Tyrion's trial, whether it's playing something against or with the Lannisters. He said he wanted to avenge his sister. We don't really know what it is, but the more we know about him, the better. But with Cersei, I think it's just there. I think it's manipulation. That's really what I thought. I don't know if anyone else. Is that what you thought, or what did you think the reason for the scene was?
Well, AJ in the chat room has a very good point and said that by talking to Margaery, and then Margaery says, well, I'll need to go talk to my father. Margaery's father is the third judge, so in these three scenes that we've seen tonight, basically Cersei gets some influence of all three of the judges come away with positive feelings about Cersei. So it definitely feels like Cersei is really, really pushing hard to get all three of the judges to have sympathy for her.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it, and she knows how to play her dad and be the dutiful daughter. She's going with what she feels like she can do with Oberyn and talking about her daughter and sensitive things and all these sorts of things, and she knows that Marjorie's dad just wants Marjorie to be happy. So I think that's probably right. I think that's a good observation by AJ.
Okay, good job, AJ. So let's get into, okay, so we see one scene with Dany tonight, and basically it's the Daenerys High Council meeting, and they're talking about what's going on, and they're sort of planning it out. Should we go to Westeros now? And everybody who's watching the show is like, yes, 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 go to Westeros. But instead, that we get some updates from Yunkai. And it turns out that things are not going well in the cities that Dany has already sacked.
Yeah, not good at all. And this Cleon the Butcher is involved. I mean, these guys have horrible names. Like, bad things are going down for sure.
Yes. He wants to be called His Imperial Majesty.
Oh, His Imperial Majesty Cleon the Butcher. Sounds like a wrestler. I don't know. I'm a little nervous about that.
Yeah. So basically, that Dany is going to, finish what she started and not yet march on Westeros.
Yeah, that sound you heard is the collective groan of literally everyone watching the show. Like, next thing we know, her dragons are going to disappear, and there's going to be a whole season of I want my dragons back. Yeah. Where are my dragons? Like, the less that Dany is approaching Westeros, the less interesting she is. So it'll be interesting to see if they can create some drama, or if there are things that are to be found that are interesting within the storyline.
Yeah, we all love Dany, but I'm sure a lot of people are like, it's season 4, go to Westeros.
Exactly.
Go
Exactly.
to Westeros now. It's going to be season 5 by the time you get there. Don't 10, go back.
10,000 is more than enough. Let's do it.
Enough. Let's go. Let's see this. But yeah, so she's gonna go back, and but she feels like if she can't rule Slaver's Bay, what chance does she have to rule Westeros?
Well, I think that's a pretty fair point ultimately, though. So, despite everything else, I think she's a little bit right about that. She doesn't want to just conquer, I mean, she wants to rule, and that we'll get, I think, to John Arryn here in the Vale and everything in a moment. But it's interesting that Robert didn't necessarily have plans to rule, and we've heard on the show that he only attended 3 small council meetings in 19 years, and he did all these things, but clearly he was brokering some allegiance and some alliance. So even though he was a conqueror, he was able to rule. So maybe Dany's selling herself a little bit short here.
Okay, so we talked about Littlefinger at the top of the show, and basically Littlefinger explains the whole Eyrie and the Bloody Gate and how that sort of leads up to it. I thought it was interesting that, have you ever watched on the Blu-ray discs the histories and lore DVDs? Or
I watched the first seasons.
Yeah, because they have Littlefinger basically is talking. He does the one for the Vale and talks about the Eyrie, and he actually is somewhat negative about it in the Blu-ray special feature. And he talks about how it's such arrogance to build a fortress like this, and basically you're out of touch if you do this. You think you're so great. And he basically was really poo-pooing the Eyrie on the Blu-ray disc. So I was surprised that he seems so impressed with it here.
Yeah, he probably doesn't. He probably wasn't thinking that later this is going to be retcon, in season 4, and to me loving the Eyrie. He may also just be kind of boastful for Sansa, saying, "Oh, these are great things." Because, think about it this way: if what you say is true, and he's planning to take out, Lysa Arryn, then he's going to rule the Vale. So he probably wants to make it sound as appealing as possible at this point.
Okay, so here comes, Uncle Peter. He comes in, and we see Robin Arryn grown up. Do you think that Robin Arryn is still breastfeeding?
Well, I mean, they did everything but show that. He's literally resting on his mother's breast when Uncle Peter comes in. So I think we can pretty much draw a line there for sure.
Do you think Uncle Peter was annoyed that Robin Arryn threw his souvenir out the moon gate?
Well, I mean, he's got it's his nephew, right? So he's got to know that kid is just a wreck, and he probably expected that. But I mean, wouldn't you be annoyed? Like, here, I brought you this nice thing. It's from King's Landing. It's glass. It's beautiful. Oh, beautiful treat for a beautiful boy. Oh, what did you do? You threw it at the moon door. What the hell's going on? Yeah, no,
I mean, is
terrible.
that the idea? Is that why you give that kid a glass bird so he can throw it out the the moon roof, the moon door?
Somebody needs to throw that kid out the moon door, for crying out loud. That kid is brutal, and
Yeah.
he's just standing at the edge of it. I'm just hoping for a strong gust of wind.
Yeah, somebody's going out the moon door before the end of the season.
You would think.
You would think that we're not, we didn't reestablish the Chekhov's moon door.
Chekhov's moon door, exactly. It's
To
going off
not,
before the end at some
to
point.
not have somebody else go through it. So, and we talked about how crazy this was, that Lysa Arryn is just all hot and heavy for Littlefinger.
Oh, it was almost unbearable, right? She's making all these noises. She's as soon as the kids leave the room, she jumps his bones. I mean, it's brutal. Like I know he's a pimp, but for Lord's sakes, lay off him.
Yeah, Lysa Arryn, stage 5 clinger.
Exactly. Totally.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Oh my God. So and then she wants to get married tonight. Now she said something about we had gotten married before. Now, what did she mean by that? Did they literally get married before, or they just like consummated a marriage?
Yeah, I think she was implying we already had a wedding night, like we've already had sex. And I think that was really the long and the short of it. Not to bring that into the mix, but I definitely think that's what happened is they had sex at some point, and she was like, "Do you remember?" And he was like, "Every day I remember," or whatever. So it's like they had, like I said, he was fostered with the Tullys. We know that he grew an affinity for both of them at that point, and especially Kat. And Lysa mentions later on to Sansa, which we'll get to, that he fought a duel and all these horrible things happened, where he kind of grew up. But I think he also became a man there with Lysa Arryn for sure.
Boom. Okay.
Boom is right.
That's right. So she really calls her shot here. She says, "I'm warning you, I'm going to scream when my husband makes love to me." And then it was a very funny cutaway to Sansa of, overhearing the act of consummating this marriage.
Yeah, what's worse? I was thinking about this during the episode. Would you rather be little Princess Shireen laying in your cell, hearing your relatives be burned alive and their screams associated with that, or would you rather be Sansa laying in your little room, hearing your relative having sex like that?
Oh my God.
I think they're equally as bad. It was brutal. I'd rather hear my family being burned alive.
I felt bad for Sansa because it seems like no matter what, she just keeps going from worse to worse, and you keep thinking it's going to get better for her.
Nothing
and
ever, no.
It never gets better. That she's like, oh, she's safe now. She's with her aunt. And then by the next time we see her, then Lysa Arryn is like threatening to kill her.
Yeah, she's doing everything short of ripping her pants off and making sure she's still a virgin. It's brutal. Like, this whole show seems to exist simply to continue to put Sansa in worse and worse situations. Like, there's some torture schadenfreude like associated with this. It's brutal. Like, nothing ever comes up Sansa. It's brutal.
Okay, so then we have this scene with Lysa Arryn and Sansa. And now in hindsight, is Lysa Arryn trying to fatten Sansa up?
That's a good point, right? Like, oh, have some sugar. Oh, your mom had a real sweet tooth. Oh, yeah, why don't you take that young body of yours and just make it totally unattractive? How does she know what Littlefinger's into, though? Maybe he likes that.
I don't know, but she basically gets very, very possessive of Littlefinger, and she thinks that she wants to know, is Sansa pregnant with Littlefinger's baby?
I mean, what? Like, all the way there, like, in the span of about 4 sentences. That's unbelievable, this insanity of this Lysa Arryn.
Yeah, she's really out there, and great news for Sansa, she's going to marry Robin Arryn.
Oh, what a prize. like I think and in that scene even, she seems to be a little sympathetic to Tyrion, like, oh, Lord Tyrion didn't want it. Like, you almost wonder, at some point, is she going to be, like, fondly remembering her marriage to Tyrion and how he was a decent and nice guy? Like, she's going to end up with, is her husband going to ask to be breastfed? I'm very concerned. Maybe that's why Lady Arryn wanted to know if Sansa was pregnant. A little more breast milk for little Robin.
Oh, no. All right, so Robin Arryn, do we have an age? Sansa is supposed to be how old at this point?
I think the
15
show.
now?
Yeah, I think somewhere about 15. The shows and the books play games with kind of aging up these characters, but we know right when she came to King's Landing, she was first really becoming an adult woman, and so now some time has passed since then for sure, maybe at least a year. So she's somewhere in the 14, 15 range.
Okay. All right. So, and don't forget that Arya and the Hound are headed here also for this party. So things are going to get much more interesting in the Vale, I think, in the coming episodes. All right. Let's talk about the Hound and Arya. And they have a couple of funny moments together, as funny as attempted murder can be, probably. So Arya, she's going through her list, and now the list is getting longer and longer and longer as the Hound correctly points out. What are you gonna say? Every single person in Westeros?
Yeah. Well, it turns out she said at least one more that you didn't want to hear, Mr. Hound.
Yeah, and the Hound. Does the Hound ever go by his formal name, or is he just completely has adopted the nickname?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? Like I think the Hound is better than Joffrey's dog, which is what he was referred to at the inn at the beginning of the season. So if you had the choice between Joffrey's dog and the Hound, I think you'd go with the Hound.
Okay.
Plus, I don't think he likes being a Clegane, right? Like, he hates his brother. He doesn't like the family name. I think he's probably satisfied just being the Hound versus, Sandor Clegane or whatever.
All right, I guess it's a cooler nickname than Littlefinger.
Yeah, for sure it is.
Okay, so the Hound has had so many funny lines, too, this season that they asked him, Arya says, what would you do if your brother was here? And he said, I'd probably tell him to shut up so I could go to sleep.
The Hound is great. The dry humor of the Hound is not to be beaten. I mean, the beginning of the season, Arya says, lots of people name their sword, and then his retort is just so off base and totally just ruinous. And then he's got his rant about chickens, and he's really turned into the comic relief in some respects. So it's really any scene with him is a treat.
Yeah, he's been great. So the Hound, then later on, that he wakes up again. This happens in season 3 also, that the Hound is sleeping and he wakes up and Arya is missing. And it turns out that she's just having her water dancing / sword fighting practice. And basically, the Hound just mocks her technique and her former sword fighting teacher.
Of course he does, right? I mean, I'd have a hard time not doing the same thing. I mean, be a nice guy about it, but the Hound just laughs in her face, literally. And, probably is proven a little bit right by what happens ultimately.
Well, then she tries to stab the Hound in the stomach, and luckily, needle cannot penetrate the Hound's armor, which he was lucky by that, because the needle is very thin. You would think they might be able to poke a hole through something.
Let's put it this way. I'm sure there's a spot on his body that she could find with that sword where she could push it through. We've seen that sword go through people's heads, and when heads are uncovered, that's an easy place to put it. So if I'm the Hound, I'm going to be a little bit careful. You got to go to sleep next to this person. If they want to kill you, I'm not sure I want to let them kind of hang around with that sword, especially after they jammed it into your stomach.
So you say, as with Arya and Walter White, tread lightly?
Tread lightly, for sure.
Yeah. So they are on their way to the Eyrie. How soon do you think they're going to get there? You think they're getting close?
The rocks where they were looked somewhat similar. So, I think they're in the Vale area, which is this kind of hard to get to, secluded area of Westeros that is really kind of off on its own and there isn't much more to it. So they appear to at least be in the general vicinity. My guess is they'll probably end up there before the season's over. So okay. I'm just basing that by what's happening with the season. I don't think we can do 2 seasons of them marching toward the Vale.
What do you think, like season finale territory or the next episode or 2?
Yeah, I think next episode or 2, probably.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Brienne and Pod. For me, I thought this was the slowest part of the episode, and I was actually a little annoyed when we had our second Brienne and Pod scene.
I feel exactly the same as you, Rob. We had the first scene, and I thought, okay, we're establishing what these characters are doing. It's a rocky relationship. Later, we'll have something else. And then when they came back to it, I wondered what's going on. And in that second scene, the only revelation was that it was obvious that Tyrion had been, there was an attempted murder of him by somebody within the, the realm, within, the Lannisters' rule, somebody, a member of the Kingsguard, that Pod killed. So. it didn't really add anything that Brienne now knows this. She has a little bit more respect, I think, for Pod, and he's happy that he can be her squire and help her take her armor off. But I really don't see where this is going. I guess we'll have to find out.
Yeah, there's so many stories that I wanted to see more about, and there's so many characters that we, haven't spent a lot of time with so far this season. And then just when we got the second Pod and Brienne, I was just staring at my watch because I, did not really, unless Brienne is with Jaime Lannister, I'm not super interested in what she's doing.
Yeah, and I mean, she's kind of on this sort of wild goose chase where she's just
going the wrong way.
Yeah.
She's going to the wall.
It's just, it doesn't really, everybody's going one way or the other, and nobody seems to be going the way they should be, and things are just, it's just not working out. But, they got to get there, so at some point we have to know that they're traveling there, I suppose, and I don't know. I'm sure that everyone else, just like you and I, wondered why there was a second scene in there.
Brienne and Pod, are we setting the stage for Game of Thrones, Mance?
Let's hope not. I don't know. Their children would be perhaps normal sized, so that would be appropriate and fine. And hey, listen, I don't know that Lady Brienne needs what Pod's bringing to the table. We know he's one of the most legendary coxmen in all of Westeros or something. I don't know.
He sure is.
Yeah, I don't know if she can tie herself into a Myronese knot, but if she can, he's ready to untie.
Okay, so let's talk about everything that happens at Craster's, okay? So we start seeing Locke. He's basically scoped the place out, and he figures out that Bran is off to the side. He ends up telling everybody that that's a kennel. Don't worry, don't go in there. I'll take care of that. And now here comes Carl, and Carl has he wants to get some more raping in because we haven't had enough rape in season 4 of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what I'm thinking when that's happening. Is goody, another rape scene. This is fantastic.
More rape, please.
I can set my watch. It's 9:40 on a Sunday night. Now I know because there's rape on my television. This is fantastic.
Now, I want to know about this, and I think this is something that somebody wanted to know in the comments. I think Jojen has the sight. Okay. And
yes.
Of course, that he tells Carl, like, hey, but just so you know, I have the sight that could be useful to you. Now, he also knows that Carl is going to be dead by the end of the night. So he sees all of these events to come. Did he foresee the events of being captured by Carl and tied up at Craster's Keep? Because you would think that they would want to avoid that. Or is it sort of like the Lost rules where it's like you can't change the future, you can only see it?
Yeah, whatever happened, happened. Like, whatever's going to happen here is going to happen here. I can see that it's going to happen, but I can't really avoid it. I'm not so sure that he even saw it. I mean, it's possible that he did, but it's possible he was monologuing just to kind of pull Carl away from his sister. And so he said something that he thought would cause him to take pause and perhaps behave differently. Or maybe he did see it. If he did see it, though, I think it's important, as we see later, that he lets Bran make the ultimate decision about which way to go. Jojen doesn't necessarily feel like, even though he sees what Bran should do, or he feels Bran should do, he doesn't necessarily feel that it's his place to affect that, right? So even if he can see the future, he doesn't feel that it's his place to make it happen. Like, characters still have to have the free will to choose what they're doing.
What do you think of Jojen's line to Bran about how you're not here, you're really there, you're not here, and we sort of saw the background melt away, and we saw like the big tree that they're trying to go to. What does that mean, you're not here?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because when you see the weirwood, and Bran has been taken to that tree before, and when he touched the tree, he had this great connection with it, where he saw all sorts of things, similar to what Daenerys saw in the House of the Undying in Season 2. He saw things maybe that had already happened. Maybe he saw things that were to happen. He heard a voice saying, "Find me, come north." So he seems to be connected in some way with these trees. And through that, maybe he's part of something bigger. That's the sense you get when he touches the tree, and I think that line plays into that a little bit. You're everywhere. You're not just here. It seems like Bran's story isn't just the guy who got pushed out of a window, and is going north because some crazy kid from Love Actually told him to. His story seems to be more about like you have a purpose, you are special, there's something unique about you, and you're meant to go find it, and I'm here to help you. And so I think that's part of what that means, is that, when you touch the tree, you had some connection with it. You're connected with a lot of things. We got to get you there.
Okay. We learned a new euphemism tonight from Carl. He asked Mira, you like it in the gutter? So that's things on the top 10 list of things not to say on the first date in Westeros.
Especially if you're going bowling, because that really makes it complicated.
Be very confusing.
Yeah.
So I did feel like Game of Thrones sort of tipped their hand with where this was going tonight, because I don't think I needed to see in the previously on that Bran can warg, because once they showed me a random, okay, Bran can warg, I felt like, okay, well, now I know that Bran is going to warg here, and I felt like they sort of tipped their hand. Am I being oversensitive?
No, I agree with you completely. Although maybe he was going to warg into Carl and have some gutter fun.
Oh no!
Yeah, we don't want that. But Bran's a young boy. You never know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's keep it out of the gutter. Let's
do that. Let's do that.
So we got to see Hodor, I believe, for the first time, kick somebody's ass and kill somebody, right?
Yeah, he went nuts. I mean, that was some awesome Hodor action. And again, Josh, I apologize that you're not here to talk about it, but yeah, that was phenomenal. He just as soon as Bran wargs into Hodor, he pulls the chains out of the wall and he's up. And I love the aftermath, right? What does Jon Snow say when he sees Locke's neck?
He's like, what could have done this?
Yeah, like something big came through here and ripped this guy's neck apart. That was unbelievable.
A little bad for Hodor after that. He's sort of like looking down at his hands, like, Hodor. Oh,
yeah, what have I done?
What have I done? He feels terrible. I murdered somebody.
Little do we know, Hodor means pacifist. Like, he's just a gentle giant who wants no violence, and Bran wargs into him and kills somebody. First thing.
But can I ask a question? Why did it take Bran warging into Hodor for Hodor to figure out that he could escape from the chains? Like, was Hodor just is he such a gentle man that he's just like that? They told him, Hodor, you are bad. You're a bad boy. You sit there. Don't move. And he's like, just sat there and was good the whole time.
Hodor. Yeah, I mean, there's a politically correct way to say it, and I think it's just that he's a gentleman. He's a gentleman, and he's a gentleman. There's no real other way about it. I think he's just a simple guy, Rob. I mean, literally the only word he can say is his name. So I don't think we're asking much for Hodor to kind of, figure stuff out, but he doesn't seem to put A and B together too much.
Okay, a couple more things on this. So Bran is this close to Jon Snow. He's this close, and he decides not to tell Jon that he's there. We were so close to getting our reunion.
Yeah, and I think this is more of either he just wants no part of Jon Snow, which is unlikely, or the more likely thing is I think he's growing to accept, like we just talked about, that he probably has some bigger role to play. And I think for a kid without working legs and really a true purpose, whose family's been killed and who's really kind of off on the run, I think it's important for him to pursue that purpose. So I think this really underlines that he's willing to pursue this at the cost of reuniting with his, for all intents and purposes, brother, and being protected and safe, as Jojen puts it. Bran chooses not to. So I think that really underscores the value of what he's embracing about himself.
Okay, so then we had a big showdown basically between Carl and Jon Snow, which was a pretty epic sword fight, or a knife fight versus a sword.
Yeah, I mean, two knives versus a sword. It was like Ninja Turtles action. It was great.
Yeah, and that was pretty good. Were you scared for Jon Snow in any way? Because he took some damage there. He got stabbed in the leg.
Let me ask you, Rob. Were you scared for Jon Snow?
Well, I guess if you know what happens to him in the books. No, I wasn't too worried about him, but it didn't look like things were going his way.
Well, he seems to just get stuck up, shot up. Like, he doesn't seem, when Hodor got jammed in the leg last episode, it just seems like you can get kind of stuck with a sword, and are these swords not rusty? Is there no tetanus in Westeros? I mean, this is brutal. People are getting jabbed with dingy swords left and right, and they don't seem to be having any issue with it. So who knows if something will come from this, Jon Snow getting stabbed, but I wasn't too worried about him.
He'll be okay. Yeah, he gets stabbed basically, Carl, through the back of the through the back of the head, out the mouth. That Paul in the chat room calls it the T-1000.
Yeah, that was exactly right. Good call, Paul. That was awesome.
Good call. So then we had one more kill that was going to happen. Where what was this other guy's name? Russ? Was that the other guy?
Rast.
So he ends up, we saw him a week or two ago, and he was taunting the dire wolf. We said, that's not a good idea. You never want to taunt the dire wolf, and he ends up getting his payback.
Yeah, and he was the one who wanted to pick on Jon Snow way back in season 1, and Jon Snow kind of woke him up with the dire wolf and gave him the, I wouldn't pick on me if I were you kind of treatment. So he's hated that damn dire wolf, but guess what? Summer is coming.
Now, okay, so I was hoping that you could explain to me which wolf is which. Okay, so they had a wolf in the cage, okay? Which wolf was that they had caged up?
That was Ghost, and I think it was actually Ghost that took out Rast, which is Jon Snow's wolf. And I believe it's Summer is Bran's wolf, right?
Yeah, because it was confusing, because Bran said, okay, let's go get Summer, and then let's go. So did they go and they took Summer, and Summer is back with Bran, and then they freed Ghost, and Ghost went back with Jon Snow? Because Jon Snow said to the direwolf, oh, it's good to see you, boy. So do we assume that Ghost is back with Jon Snow and Summer is back with Bran?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, and Bran needed him. Bran wanted to free Summer partially because that's Bran's eyes and ears in a lot of instances. He likes hunting as him, but it also gives him an ability kind of to scout and to kind of see through the forest ahead of them when they're at camp or they're somewhere. So he kind of not only wanted Summer, he felt like he needed Summer, but he also then in the process obviously freed Ghost for sure.
Okay. All right. Let's start to jump into your questions here on Game of Thrones Live. That's what makes this so much fun, is hearing from you guys, of course, in the chat and on our questions here on Twitter and on YouTube. Hashtag PS Recaps, or go to postshowrecaps.com/YouTube for the video feed that you're watching right now to post your questions. Okay. The Kazman5656 wants to know, first off, I wanted to say I love the show. Secondly, thank you very much, Kazman. Secondly, I was wondering what was up with Jojen and his flaming hand. I know he has the green sight, but I didn't know he could do all that. Yeah, that was a very good question. What was up with Jojen and his hand?
That's a very good question. I mean, is he Tony Stark? Is it the stigmata? I really don't know. The show hasn't really delved into what might be up with that flaming hand, but they made it a pretty big point to show it. So I think we have to just kind of wait and see.
Is that something that's explained in the books and we have to wait to see how it's explained on the TV show, or is this something that you haven't seen before?
I think we can just say it's an interesting thing that came up, and I'm not 100% sure where they're going with it, but I have some theories. So the book certainly lend some indication of what that might have been, but it certainly seems like a little bit of an embellishment too.
Is Jojen like a Peter Petrelli? Is somebody else nearby that can also light their body on fire, and he's inherited that power?
Please no. Please no, because I don't think we have time for that, and I don't want a Siler introduced after everything else.
Okay. All right, let's go to Alex Kidwell wants to know, now that Lysa's big reveal has been made, and we all know Littlefinger not only convinced her to kill her husband, but also was behind the letter to Catelyn that led to arresting Tyrion, starting the war, and getting Ned whacked, don't you feel, the whole question's not there. That was such a setup, but unfortunately, I think we hit a character limit there on our YouTube comment. So unfortunately, that if we could get, Scott, if you could see what the end of that question is, send it to me in chat so we can answer that.
I can answer that. I do feel, Alex. I feel very much.
Okay. Let's go to Troy D. If Josh is Samwell, that makes Rob the John. Which character are you, Antonio? Oh, I'm Jon Snow, and Nicole is going to be very excited to hear that. Okay, so who would you be? Are you? Hopefully you're not Locke.
I think if I take my glasses off, I'm Sir Dantos, but I'm not going to own up to that. So I think maybe I'd like to be maybe one of the wildlings. Maybe maybe Tormund Giantsbane. I think that's what I'll go for. Tormund Giantsbane.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So going back to that last question. Okay. So let me just now that Lysa's big reveal has been made, and we all know that Littlefinger not only convinced her husband to kill her husband, but was also behind the letter to Catelyn that led to arresting Tyrion, starting the war, and getting Ned whacked. Don't you feel like Cat is more to blame for the ultimate downfall of the Starks? Some due diligence with her sister's claims might have saved everyone except maybe Bran's legs. I'll tell you what, that Littlefinger was going to get killed by Ned Stark's brother. He was going to kill him, and Cat Stark said, "Please don't kill Littlefinger. He's a good guy." And once again, we see that anybody in the Stark family, even if they're not a Stark yet, has very questionable judgment.
Yeah, and no good deed goes unpunished, right? Like, they try to do the right thing, and look what they get for it. So she, Kat, as we saw throughout, she was to blame for a lot of things. She brokered the deal and kind of let Jaime go, and that started the whole thing, where it was a huge deal. And then, of course, we saw what happened with, the Karstarks and, Roose Bolton and everybody kind of leaving Rob in the dust as a result. And so she's responsible for a lot of the despair and destruction that happened to the Stark family. Although I think I'll point out that Ned really kind of pushed Littlefinger. We don't know if Littlefinger was in it to take the Starks out completely or not, but when Ned called him treasonous, that was it for Littlefinger, and that's when he turned on Ned and had him arrested, put the dagger to his throat and said, "I told you not to trust anyone." So I think Ned really kind of dug his own grave a little bit there.
Okay. All right, let's go to this question. This is from our good friend Jessica Leese, who I'll be talking to about The Amazing Race in just a little bit. And her question is, tonight in a conversation with the Hound, Arya seemed very sure that Syrio Forel died at the hands of Meryn Trant. The last time we saw him, Syrio seemed to be up against impossible odds, but neither the books nor the show explicitly showed his death. Do you think that we could take Arya's statement as more explicit evidence that Syrio did not survive, or is this another case of the show answering a question that the books haven't, or is she just making an assumption?
I think it's a great question, Jessica, and I think that it's a question that we should discuss on the book club at length a little bit more. But I will say, with the show in general, if you don't see a character die on screen, I don't think you can prove that they're dead. I'd certainly think that the Hound's observation about why we never saw Syrio again and why Meryn Trant seemed to be alive is that the odds were against Syrio and he probably died. But we didn't see him die on screen, so I don't know that this was confirmation of anything.
I thought he was pretty dead.
Mostly dead. Mostly dead.
Mostly dead. Okay, let's keep going. Matt Ford says, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good is Littlefinger's showman's game?
What do you think, Rob? I'm going to... the problem is it's sort of like this season of Survivor with LJ and Trish, right? It's like, if you go for the older crazy person who wants you, then certainly you can control them. I mean, if Littlefinger's able to woo Sansa, then I'm going to think his showman's game is off the charts. We're going to give him like an 11. But as it stands right now, 6, maybe 5.5. What do you think, Rob?
Oh, well, again, for what he's so great at what he's doing, Littlefinger. And really, I mean, I think that, no matter what, like, I feel like we're starting to see that Littlefinger is the ultimate villain of the entire series, because he is really the one pulling the strings everywhere. That we found out tonight that 4 seasons of crap that we've been dealing with have all been because of Littlefinger. Basically, yeah. Let's just pretend what the show would be if there was no Littlefinger. It would just be Robert would still be king. Ned would still be in Winterfell. Ned Stark would still be alive. Okay, I guess Daenerys would still be doing her stuff. That would all still be the same. And just everything else would just be happy. Jon Snow would be... Actually, well, I guess the wildlings would still be coming. There would still be White Walkers. So I guess everything would be the same except for King's Landing and the War of the Five Kings. If you take that my favorite parts of the show. So I can't get too much on Littlefinger's case because my favorite parts of the show he's been completely responsible for.
Yeah, I mean he's really stirred up a lot of fun. I mean, when you have a season of Survivor, for example, you have challenges regardless of whether the social game and the tribal councils are any good. So he's really the one who's putting the fuel to that fire, and so in that regard, we can't hate him too much.
Yeah, no, and I don't hate him. I think he's absolutely a fantastic character on the show, but he's responsible for lots of bad things. Okay, here's a question from Raquel, and I'm not sure if I have the whole question here. Okay, so why didn't she plan to rule the other cities? Talking about Daenerys. So she practically left minutes after sacking each city, left some random people there, and now she will rule Meereen and leave Yunkai and Astapor to fend for themselves. No, just no.
Yeah.
Is this a knock on Dany?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think the big deal about that is that she's young, right? I mean, she's been aged up a little to be on the show, but she wasn't certainly born. She was born of a great family, but she was literally the last in line and the most unlikely from the family to be asked to rule. So for her to be, I guess she wasn't technically the last in line, but she was the last in line that that could have ruled at that point. So for her to be in this position now where she's really trying to take, we saw what happened with Viserys, right? Like he knew so little about ruling that he couldn't even get to the point where Daenerys is. He couldn't rally anyone behind him. Nobody wanted to support him, and in fact, he was killed and laughed at. So for her to get to where she's gotten, she's already learned a lot. She clearly has game, but there's more to ruling people than just being a good conqueror, and I think she's learning that.
She's done a great job so far, but I kind of feel like, has she bitten off more than she can chew? Like, I feel like, I don't remember where I saw this motivational quote, but it basically is like, remember what your goal is and don't get distracted with the other stuff. And I'm sure it was much more eloquently in our poster wherever I saw this. But has Dany gotten distracted from what she came here to do?
Yeah, I think a little bit, but I think that she, I think she's decided, and I think the Misha stuff and the stuff with the Khaleesi and having a whole Khalasar and making her feel like she isn't just a conqueror but a ruler. I think that she's liking that, and I think it's important. I don't think you'd want somebody who would just come in and burn down the realm. I think you want somebody who would actually want to help the realm and save it. So it's interesting to see the dichotomy playing out across Daenerys.
Okay. Here's a question from Spicy Wasabi. Is Sansa the Kim Bauer of Game of Thrones?
Where's the mountain lion? Where's the coyote?
Well, she's in the mountains now, so that a mountain lion may not be far away.
Yeah.
So one note on 24, which we're so excited for 24, Live Another Day. But as I was told by one of the good friends of the show, Phil let me know that YouTube is having Google Hangout is doing an upgrade during the time that we originally planned to do 24 live after the Live Another Day premiere on Monday night. So what Josh and I are going to do is we're actually going to do that on Tuesday morning now, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. So we'll be on after 24, but there's a maintenance issue happening on Google Hangouts, and we can't do a live Hangout then. So rather than do it late on the East Coast, we are going to do it on Monday morning. So look for that show. That's if you want to join us live, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific on postshowrecaps.com, and of course the podcast will be up shortly after that. Okay? So many long questions tonight. Brent Butterworth wants to know, we find out that Littlefinger was behind the death of the King of the Vale. He has taken his time to become the king himself. Do you believe that he would allow Robin Arryn to marry Sansa, or do you believe that Robin will join his glass bird? Well, let me answer that question rather than speculate about that. I'm not sure exactly what that would buy Littlefinger to knock off Robin Arryn. I mean, if he, he's just a kid. He's not going to, be doing anything with Sansa anytime soon. So I don't think that's part of Littlefinger's big plan. If anything, I think it makes more sense for him to knock off Lysa Arryn so he doesn't have to deal with her craziness. all the time. Now, in the rules of succession, though, if Littlefinger marries Lysa Arryn, okay, and he becomes the new king of the, or the, not the king, but the warden of the mountains, is that, would that be the correct title?
Lord of the Vale, like
Lord of the Vale? Okay.
Yeah.
So if he became the new Lord of the Vale, okay, and he's married to Lysa Arryn, but if he bumped off Lysa Arryn, would Robin Arryn become the rightful heir, or would Littlefinger remain the heir of the, from what you know about, I know you practice law in the United States of America, but from what you know of Westerosi law?
I think that Littlefinger would be in charge still, but Robin is certainly the heir. So if Littlefinger were to die, it's Robin's ultimately, and I think that Robin in the picture could produce some interesting results later. So a lot of it is support. When Littlefinger mentions the wedding, he talks about how he would like to see all the the different houses from the Vale come to attend, and it's interesting that Lady Arryn is so disinterested in playing those political games, and she said they all just wanted to sleep with me. Those guys weren't all coming to her door because she's a very attractive lady. They were coming to her door because they wanted the power. So it's obvious Littlefinger will have a lot of that power. What he does with it, I don't know. We did have a question on Twitter from Dave Baker, and Dave asked what we thought. Rob, I'd like to know what you think. What do you think Littlefinger's long-term plan is? Like, where do you think he's going with this?
Oh, well, I feel like that his end game is the Iron Throne. I feel like that's where he's going. I mean, he was sitting there that one day he was staring at the Iron Throne, and he was saying like that's when he gave his whole "Chaos is a Ladder" speech. So I kind of feel like, I mean, to what end will he stop? Like, he's like, okay, now I'm this, so now I'm happy. I think that his ultimate goal is to rule.
I think that's right, and I think the Chaos is a Ladder is the perfect summary. I mean, if his house had words, that would be the perfect set of words for his house, because that's what he's just created chaos and then made his way up the ladder through that chaos. And so, what he's doing in the Vale, what his long-term plan is, it's probably just to get himself higher up that ladder so that when he makes more chaos, he can climb even higher.
Okay, let's do two more questions. This is from Jordan Kalish. He wants to know, do you agree that you don't need to make a formal alliance with people you trust? Oh, well, I thought that was actually a very poignant words from Tywin Lannister.
Yeah, and it was followed up a little bit with Littlefinger, talking about wanting to connect those houses or bring them in. I think it's an interesting question. Certainly the alliance they've made with the Tyrells, they kind of have to seal it in stone because they're counting on them so much, and you can't trust them as much. But it's interesting. I don't think things need to be formalized per se. What do you think, Rob?
But when you say like the real life equivalent of that is if you really trust somebody, you don't have to have a contract with them, and it's really the people that you don't trust that you want to make sure you have everything in writing.
Yeah, it's sort of like a prenup, right? Like it's just one, it's one of those things that's always difficult to discuss, and you don't want to have somebody sign a prenup if you really want to tell them you love them and you trust them. But on the other hand, you probably should if there's any kind of doubt in your mind, and the fact that you're doing it makes them feel like it's messy. So you got to be very careful with that.
Okay, let's do one last question here. This is from Saint's Disciple. Why was Cersei okay with Margaery and Tommen? She seemed very different tonight. What caused this change? Well, we talked about this at the top of the show, and I guess it's a question of, was she working the jury? Was this jury tampering, Antonio?
I mean, yes, I think so. But, she's a pro at it. So, if they're not in that's called ex parte, talking outside the court's chambers, I think it's okay, depending on what you're talking about. She did a very good job, except with Tywin, of just kind of talking not about the case. So, that's why she was there.
All right, one more question. This is from Spicy Wasabi. Is Oberyn Martell the second coming of Inigo Montoya?
Wait till I get going. Yeah, that would be inconceivable. I don't know. I think it would be great if
That's very good.
If we had some more tie-ins. I mean, we've got a giant. Locke looked like Christopher Guest in that movie. We need a Miracle Max. I think we'd all agree on that.
I don't know if we need Saul from Homeland though.
No, well, that'd be really nice if someone died. He could whisper a nice prayer over them. I mean, there could really
Or
be some
sing.
good things. The man is multi-talented. There's no denying it. He could dance and sword fight. There's room for him on the show for sure.
Okay, so let's not get into Homeland because we don't need to talk about Brody and all that stuff. Okay, so
No.
Antonio, fantastic job on the stepping in here and pinch hitting. You have definitely demonstrated your knowledge of all things Song of Fire and Ice. Congratulations.
That's good. Thank you very much, Rob. I'm sure that phrase alone will win me the hearts of many a man and woman around the world.
Well, and we have to figure out a show for us to start recapping on the post-show recaps.
Yeah, let's do it.
We need to get you back in the rotation.
I feel like a veteran pitcher who's been signed by a new team. I'm ready.
All right. Fantastic. All right, so big day coming up here, or big week coming up here on the post-show recaps. I told you about 24 live. That's going to be on Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. Saturday Night Live, we're going to recap the Andrew Garfield episode of Saturday Night Live on post-show recaps as well. That is going to be at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Eastern, and then at that same time on Tuesday, that's going to be your Game of Thrones book club live with Josh Wigler and Terry Schwartz, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific if you want to join that show live at postshowrecaps.com. And then don't forget our feedback show. Send us your voicemails and your questions. For text questions or email questions, you can go to postshowrecaps.com/feedback. And for your voicemail questions, postshowrecaps.com/voicemail. And Josh Wigler and I will answer all those questions and have that show posted for you guys on Wednesday. So a lot to do here in the next couple days on the post-show recaps.
I'm looking forward to it.
Don't miss an episode. Subscribe, postshowrecaps.com/iTunes, or click the podcast tab at the top on postshowrecaps.com to subscribe to any of our shows in any way you want to. So there you have it, Antonio. Antonio, thank you so much. Follow Antonio on Twitter. He's at AC Mazzaro.
That's me.
That's you. And I'm at Rob Cesternino and at Post Show Recaps as well. So have a great week, everybody. We'll talk to you again soon. Take care.